Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drayhon, and welcome back to an overview on Perfect Draw, the card game anime-based role-playing game. I cannot describe to you enough how great of a system this is. I mean, it has just been a phenomenal project, and all the backing that went into it was smashed out of the park. It is just a great system, and we even were getting access to more character options in the form of the booster pack. Just the name of the book, it's not an actual booster pack. This project has been great, and I love reading it. I'm going to go ahead and say right off the bat that I am not sponsored by the creators of Perfect Draw, Double Summon Games. They never contacted me, they are not giving me money, nothing. I am giving to you right now my own personal opinions on this amazing book. But overall, what I am going to be telling you is coming straight from this book. Nothing more. So, why don't we go ahead and get started with this game. Now, Double Summon Games did make it incredibly easy to pick up and start playing this system, as it only requires a player to have 2 6-sided dice, and nothing else. Relatively simple, but it goes a long way. Most of what I'm going to be talking about is for the Game Master, or as they call it inside this RPG, the Judge. Gotta say, perfect name. But there are also things that we are going to need to cover for you players. So keep that in mind. Don't click off this video just because it's mostly focused to the Game Master. You players are going to have to know these things as well. Now, for any relevant examples, I am going to be using the character archetype known as the Resolved. The name of the exact character that has this archetype, I cannot remember the name for. V, if you would, could you please put up the name of this character when you edit? Thank you. Now, shall we begin? Starting things off with our actions or moves. To resolve one of these actions, you are going to need to roll 2 6-sided die and add the appropriate attribute, which we have 3 of. Again, relatively simple system. First off is Passion. Represents your character's will and resolve to attain their goals, their energy, and determination. Next is Skill, represents your character's intellect and talent regarding both the game and the world beyond that, their ability and proficiency. Third and finally, we have Friendship, represents your character's empathy and their connections to the world and other people, their caring and social skills. Next is this game's version of the disadvantage mechanic, known simply as baggage. When you have a baggage that is relevant to a action or move, you are going to put a -1 modifier on that check. So for example, a 2d6 with your passion, with your -1 to baggage. Then you also have serious baggage, which if you have a relevant serious baggage, you not only put a -1 onto your check, but you ignore your attribute bonus. Now, this might seem kind of harsh. I mean, what if you have multiple different types of baggage that are relevant to the situation? And how are you to get rid of them? Well, don't worry, we'll talk about how to get rid of baggage here shortly. But baggage isn't all that bad. Disadvantages of baggage. We'll start with this first and then we get into the benefits. When you make a roll or for a general move, for each piece of baggage your character has that is relevant to the action, you take a -1 to the roll. This cannot reduce the modifier of the roll below a -1. For instance, if your character normally has a +1 to friendship, and rolls plus friendship with one piece of relevant baggage, they would instead roll +0. If they had 3 pieces of relevant baggage, they would only roll with a -1 instead of a -2. So you would only roll 2d6 -1 for your check. Makes perfect sense. When serious baggage is relevant to a roll, you always roll with a -1, no matter the amount you would otherwise rolled with. So it's always going to be a -1 to that check if you ever have enough baggage to cancel out your relevant attribute. Next is benefits of baggage. While baggage can spur complications within the fiction and apply penalties to rolls, they also provide the stakes and relevant factors, keeping the story interesting, acting as a source of motivation and determination. It is flavor for your character building. Being able to have a nice character arc. It builds character, as it were. Anyway, when you overcome baggage, you will gain experience, or advance as if the baggage was serious. Additionally, in battle, players are able to use advantage gained with relevant baggage to affect the card game itself. We'll get into that here in a moment. Baggage can also act as an indicator to the judge that you want something in the narrative to come up more. Story beats for your character. It makes things interesting. It lets your character be more involved in the story. Something that we always had a problem with, supposedly, within RPG systems like Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder. This is an opportunity for your character to have their moment and take the spotlight. Now, that is a bit of a problem. We don't want a single character to own the spotlight, and we will get more into that near the end of the video. But for now, if we were to get a 10 or above on a move or action check, this is counted as a critical success. You will get a positive resolution with no ill side effects. If you get a 7 through 9, depending on what check you are making, it could be a success, or it could be a failure. Or there could be a mix of both. Perhaps maybe you succeed at it, but there are some complications, some ill-fated side effects. Sure, you may have saved your best friend. However, it is let out that you have been keeping a secret from them, or you had harmed them in some way. Maybe you dove after them when they were falling into a pit of acid, but the result of you saving them caused them to literally break their leg. And something like that. Now, on a 6 or less for these checks, it is counted as a critical failure of sorts. The outcome is automatically negative and you gain 1 baggage. Very interesting. And it makes it to where you can actually gain some baggage later. Say you're taking a test and you roll a 6 on that check you would make for completing the test. You failed spectacularly. Congratulations. You now have baggage to signify that you have failed at getting a good grade once again. Alright. Now, like I said, there are ways to resolve baggage, but there might be a reason that you would want to gain more baggage. So we have an ability known as Become Vulnerable. At some points in the game, it would be appropriate for your character to gain baggage due to an event within the narrative, but nothing asks you specifically to gain that baggage. When this occurs, discuss with your judge as to whether it's appropriate for your character to become vulnerable. If they agree, add the baggage to your character sheet. Now, as far as resolving baggage, perhaps you want to make sure you do not fail that very important check next game session. Like, say you are about to go into a dangerous area and you want to make sure you are capable of saving somebody if a tree were to try to fall on top of their head. So you want to be able to resolve the baggage, resulting in causing you to fail that save, fail that check. Similar to becoming vulnerable, if you feel at any point during the game a piece of baggage is no longer applicable to your character, you can discuss with your judge whether it's appropriate and relevant to resolve baggage. If they agree, resolve it and mark experience. You'll also check your baggage at the end of every battle and during rests, so don't worry about keeping track of this too closely. Resolve baggage isn't usable for serious baggage, which can only be resolved using the Overcome Your Weakness move. Before we get into discussing how we can remove baggage, I do want to point out something that I forgot to mention earlier. I don't know why I didn't move this slide over. We have different skills for each one of our attributes. For passion, we have enter a dangerous situation, reveal a new possibility. For skill, we have brandish your skills and investigate your surroundings. For friendship, you have convey your ideals and understand someone's true feelings. These are just example skills that are given to us in the rules. You could, in theory, have more skills that are relevant to each of these attributes. So keep that in mind when you are doing certain things. Now, let's talk about resolving our baggage. Through rendering it moot in the course of the narrative, such as passing time to heal an injury, losing a crush on someone after a time, represented by resolve baggage move and by periodic checks whenever players reflect after card combat or take a prolonged rest. Through overcoming baggage and confronting the baggage, as represented in Overcome Your Weakness. Overcoming your weakness is a pretty good skill. Here is what the book says about overcome your weakness. Unlike most moves in Perfect Draw, overcome your weakness is something you may choose to do without direct input from your judge. So long as you fulfill the conditions required, you can always use this move. First, your character needs to have baggage they're looking to overcome. This could be as simple as pushing through your broken leg, or as complicated as facing your abuser head-on in battle. If you're looking to overcome normal baggage, you only need to meet one of the conditions, and you will be able to gain the first benefit listed on that particular condition. If it is a serious baggage you are looking to overcome, you have to meet all three of the conditions, and if you do, you gain the serious benefit instead of the first benefit. The conditions are as follows. I am facing the source of my baggage head on. The second condition is overcoming this baggage is necessary to help someone or something dear to me. And finally, the final condition that you could have to meet, someone close to me has put effort into believing in me and helping me overcome this baggage. This would be very useful for other players in the party to take advantage of. Encourage their fellow party members if a certain baggage is weighing heavily on them. And since some baggage will give you access to more experience points, it is definitely beneficial to help each other level up. Now for your benefit choices, we have use your newfound strength to overcome the immediate threat. Confront someone or something otherwise difficult or nigh impossible to face. And get what you want out of the situation. Some very useful benefits, I assure you. And now we shall get into combat itself, the whole reason why you're here. Card games like Cardfight Vanguard, Redemption, Wars, World of Warcraft, and even Magic the Gathering have their own card-based system. I mean, even Duel Monsters has an anime for this very topic. Even that one short about a Pokemon trading card game anime, pretty neat. But there are so many choices in card games that we couldn't possibly tackle each and every single one of the rules of that card game. So for the purposes of card combat rules, we are going to be looking at the book and using the rules in the chapter to help us with combat. Now, I do have to point out that there are multiple card games out there. We just went over just a few examples. But do remember that your world should have other card games going on as well. Perhaps during downtime, your party goes to a tournament and watches another card game event. Perhaps you guys are playing Vanguard, but you have a friend who is in a tournament of Magic the Gathering. It could be reasonable, and I would definitely recommend putting that into practice with some of these games. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the actual rules of Perfect Draw's card game. The win condition, of course, is going to be bringing your opponent's life points to 0. For our card game combat, we are going to be using our main character, the Resolved, and her opponent, the Prodigy. So, we need to figure out what type of battle this is. Is it filler? Is it significant? Or is it the grand finale of an arc? If it is just filler, it is recommended that if it is insignificant, both participants should instead roll the Brandish Your Skills move as a way to see who wins the outcome. You can still try to play the game. You're not going to have as much life as you would as a significant battle, but you can still play as if you were battling. Next, you need to decide who goes first. Normally, it is the competitor. And finally, you need to resolve your advantage. You gain 1 point of advantage for each relevant baggage to the card game at hand. For our example, both the Resolved and the Prodigy have a +1 advantage, since they each have 1 relevant baggage to this combat. The Prodigy is looking to get revenge on the Resolved, while the Resolved needs to be able to prove that they are indeed the best at this game. Ending a card game. When a card game finishes, any stakes of the fight resolve. For instance, if a character made a deal based on whether they won or lost the game, they are now required to fulfill the appropriate end of the bargain. Then, each player, whether involved or uninvolved in the card game, should check their baggage list. If any baggage has been resolved, or is otherwise no longer relevant, resolve it and mark experience. This is not possible for serious baggage. Finally, any player involved in the fight, mark experience for their character. Next, let's talk about tension. Your tension is equal to however many combat tension questions you've been able to cross off during combat. So, for example, our Resolved could tease our Prodigy about their baggage, which is the second question. Has your opponent used your baggage to gain an advantage over you? This would be a yes. Now, of course, the Prodigy can rebuttal and use the Resolved's own baggage against them. Both of them, of course, gaining that access to combat tension. Next is turn actions. Pretty standard stuff for your average card game. You start off the turn with a draw, you play a card from your hand, then you'll play one other type of card, then you'll be able to attack with your warriors, and of course the end of your turn. There are various checks that you can use during the card combat that use your tension as a attribute modifier. These skills include decide the outcome of a clash. When 2 of your warriors are of equal strength, you will make this check to see which one of those warriors will win the outcome of that clash. You can also risk everything to win, which could give you some baggage, but end up giving you some more advantage if you are successful at this apparent check. You can also counter an opponent's play. This doesn't come up often, and some of these abilities will only come up in card form. You can also protect against a response, which could be useful from time to time. Hey there, everybody, it's me, V, the editor of these videos. Just wanted to pause real quick and tell you guys that we forgot a couple of things about the card game combat before we get into the different card types. There was a very important section for the opponent's turn. So this is the NPC that your judge is going to control. So judges, listen up real quick. There's just a couple of suggestions that you could take for the opponent's turn in the card game combat, such as being able to play certain cards, have certain counters, lashing out against the players playing the current game, maybe even revealing a backup plan. Also, when we talk about the cards, you're probably wondering how you can represent each of the cards that are being played in combat. When Double 7 Games was releasing all of their updates for the core book, they did release some downloadable content for actual physical copies of the cards that you can put into Photoshop and create your own physical copies of various cards. This includes a overlay, a template, the background, and also a card border for the various different items, mostly the warriors items and invocations. But you would be able to create your own physical copies of cards that you would be able to print out after you put in everything you wanted on those cards, such as an image, an effect, whatever. So, that's everything we wanted to go ahead and cover. So I'll go ahead and give this back over to Drehan. Like, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell. Now let's go ahead and go over the card types. In Perfect Draw, we have access to the warriors, the items, and there's also a card known as invocations. Invocations are cards that don't create permanent fixtures onto the battlefield. They don't have a strength rating, and they go into the graveyard immediately upon being played. These are your spell cards, your instants, your sorceries, and so on. An example card that I can give you is Draw of Knowledge, Perfect Draw's version of the Pot of Greed. Now, on page 225, this comes from Chapter 6. What do you do with players that are not playing a card game? Now, while you could have a multiplayer battle with possibly 2 or even more players facing off against each other or against a team of opponents, or you can have simultaneous battles where you have 3 different card game battles going on, one with each player. Those kind of split the attention of your judge, and I don't recommend doing that too often. It would be nice, and it would definitely be useful, especially during tournament arcs where you are going to have multiple battles happening simultaneously. But there is a third option here, and that is giving players other goals. Card game battles are watching, and watching them aren't the only available options to those on the sidelines. While card games are ongoing, other threats may still exist. For instance, a battle could be taking place within two competitors as they race down the highway. One player may need to focus on driving to avoid an upcoming cliff, while another player deals with the engine having troubles. What is with these examples? Anyway, one player may need to focus on driving. Similarly, an NPC the players like could have been captured, giving everyone not in the ongoing battle a chance to go on a side quest concurrently with the ongoing game. When you do this, it can be smart to make the card game and the plot outside of it tie into one another. For instance, maybe the bomb that the players are trying to disarm is tied to life in the card game. Maybe when a player takes a particularly hard blow in the card game, the shock of the blast almost hits an uninvolved player. Or maybe when the opponent uses a threat move, they intentionally attempt to interfere with the aims of those outside the game. And that is all for today's video. I do hope that you enjoyed. If you would like to see more, I would definitely recommend checking out Double Summon Games channel here on YouTube. They have 3 videos that go in depth into the rules of Perfect Draw. And they are also working on a new project known as Despair Dilemma, an RPG that is based off of the Death Game anime, such as Squid Game and Danganronpa. And with that being said, this has been Drehan, and I am offline.